What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode number 50 of My Social Life. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly, and I just want to take the time to acknowledge the fact that this is episode number 50. I can't believe it. I think back to just starting this podcast a little over a year ago now, and just to see everything that I've done and where I've gone and who I've met over the course of the last 50 episodes is crazy, and I wouldn't have done it and been able to do it without the support of you, the listeners of this podcast. So I just want to say thank you, whether you've listened to every single episode or you listened to a couple episodes here and there, or even if this is your first episode, if you've listened at any point over the course of these last 50 podcast interviews, I just want to say thank you. And before we jump into today's conversation with Sam Founda, there's a couple things I want to go over first. Number one, if you enjoy today's episode, please consider leaving a rating and a review. It really helps to grow the podcast because the podcast algorithms look more positively upon podcasts that receive a lot of positive ratings and reviews. So if you have some time to do that after this episode, I'd really appreciate it. And if you're one of the people that have recently found the podcast, welcome. I'm very excited to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, stay tuned for future episodes. And to everybody listening, make sure you screenshot this, post it to your Instagram story, tag @MySocialLifePodcast, and I'll feature you on the account and send you a message as well. Now, without further ado, let's get to my conversation with Sam Founda. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the real stories behind the people on social media. I'm your host, Jacob Kelly, and today we're joined by Sam Founda. And Sam is an entrepreneur, a businessman. He's also a luxury traveler, and he's grown his Instagram to over 200,000 Instagram followers. And I'm very excited to have him here on the podcast today. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
So where I want to start this is I just want to talk about how you got into digital, because I've seen on different places where it says you have 10 years of digital experience. So how did you kind of accrue that?
Good question, Jacob. Basically, when I was at uni, I met a guy who was a software developer. At the time, he was talking about something called affiliate marketing, which I had no idea about. At the time, I was studying graphic design and branding. So I've delved into the topic with him, and he mentioned to me what he does and talked about affiliate marketing, which I ended up going down that path. And basically, to elaborate on that, affiliate marketing is just promoting other people's products, and you take like a commission or a cut from promoting their products. So I started going down into that industry, and then I grew a passion for SEO, which then I went agency side, worked for multiple agencies over a period of time. And then I found social media to be a really big thing that was on the rise. I got into Instagram about 7 years ago when it was still a photo album. And then, the growth pretty much happened from there. I started doing a lot of engagement and interaction with a lot of people, and just putting out really good content.
And so what was it about Instagram 7 years ago where you decided that this was a platform you were going to try and build a brand on?
Initially, it wasn't that case. It was just me experimenting with the platform and seeing what's it about. I was a bit resistant to it because at the start I was heavily focused more on SEO rather than the social media side of things. But then I've realized that social and I saw the trend of it like going up and really starting to explode. So that's when I decided to really start leveraging it properly and putting a lot of effort into it.
And then so over the last 7 years of growing your Instagram account, what are some things that you've done to get new followers onto your profile?
When I first started out, it was mostly just posting organic content, using a lot of hashtags. Back then it was easy to use spammy hashtags. So using hashtags that's not even relevant to your content, and you'll rank for those hashtags and you start getting a lot of followers. So that was the easiest way to grow followers back then. But, with the new updates on Instagram and what's happening in the industry right now, it takes about building genuine, network and relationships. And that's by leaving genuine comments. I don't know if you're familiar with with Gary Vee's $80 strategy.
Yeah, I'm very familiar.
Yeah, so I used a very similar strategy, but I just went a little bit further. So instead of just, leaving my 2 cents on every post that's ranked in the top 9 hashtags, I basically leave multiple comments at the same time, which gives me more chance to be visible and more visibility on popular Instagram accounts.
It's funny you say that because that's actually how I ended up finding your account. Was you left a comment on one of my posts. I found your profile and sent you a message, and that's why we're here today. But so your Instagram profile is all based around luxury travel, right? For the most part.
Yes, that's right.
So how did you kind of settle on that niche?
Look, I started in fashion. Fashion was my first entry into Instagram. So I was doing a lot of fashion, lifestyle style content. But I've been always interested in travel, and this is something that I've learned growing up. Through my parents themselves, who've always been interested in travel as well. So I thought about changing my direction slightly and just go towards more travel. And then from there, I found obviously more interest in that luxury travel niche. And I went on to work with over 40 hotels just in the past 2 years.
That's crazy. So I'm curious as to why you've left your Instagram name at SMV.Style instead of changing it to Founda or something like that.
Look, the name, I've had that name for a long time, and it was hard for me just to change the name to my personal name because, again, Instagram also uses keywords in the username or in the bio to be able to be discovered. So I find having style in there somehow gives me a bit of an advantage rather than just using my personal name.
And I kind of want to double back to niches there for a minute because I know niches are extremely important when it comes to growing a brand on social. So what would your best tips be for someone that's trying to decide how they should kind of niche down their content?
It depends on the end goal. It depends if is it a personal goal or is it more of a business goal. If it's a business goal, then you focus on if the niche, can you make money from that niche? Can you monetize that niche? If you can, then you got to find out who are the best people in the industry that's doing it right now and replicating something similar. So looking at the style of content, look at what type of hashtags they use, look at the types of captions that they use, and from there trying to go one step further and actually start building relationships using direct messages.
That's actually something that I've done, and it's an effective strategy. And I haven't done it enough, but I'll go to Gary Vee's Instagram and I'll go through kind of his comments and I'll engage and send direct messages to people there.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to do it.
So with your content then for your Instagram, how do you ensure that it maps to the niche that you've picked out?
Look, it's all about aligning it to what people are actually interested in, engaging with. If you're in the luxury travel niche, then people like to see, nice hotels and just photographs of nice backgrounds and anything within that luxury industry. That's what people are looking to see pretty much. So that's where I try to align my content to that and give people what they're actually looking for and what they're interested in.
And how often are you traveling then? And I ask that because I'm curious as to how you gather all the content for your Instagram to keep it populated on. I think you post every other day.
Yeah, look, I traveled last year to 15 countries. I did 3 months of travel, but that was split between every month or 2 months. I would travel for a couple of weeks and then I'll come back and I'll travel again. In terms of generating that content, I use local photographers or local bloggers and I do some sort of a value exchange. So in exchange for me reposting them on my page and giving them credits and tagging them and so on, they give me free content.
Okay. And then so you've settled, I think, every other day that you're posting right now?
Every other day because my days are usually really busy.
Yeah, I bet. And I want to talk about, you had a couple posts on your Instagram recently that weren't specifically related to luxury travel. They were more about your expertise in the social space. And I kind of want to pick your brain on a couple of them.
Yeah, cool.
The first one was you had your top tips for Instagram in 2019. And one of them was you need to tell a story. So why is that one of the most important things on Instagram in 2019?
I think because people like stories. It's just part of human psychology. We've always been, it's ingrained in us to wanting to listen to stories and be engaged with stories. So telling stories with your content and having that like it builds more of a stronger emotional connection with the end user, which in exchange will likely end up in having more engagement from that user and eventually actually generating whatever it is you're trying to achieve, whether it's a lead or a sale or whatever else. So having stories are like very important as part of your narrative on social.
Mm-hmm. And one of the best ways that you kind of talked about in that video, that the best way to tell that story is by using videos. So from what you've seen so far, or like this year, video content is what people should be producing in 2019, correct?
That's right.
And why is that? Like, what have you seen that kind of points towards that?
Look, the Instagram algorithm favors videos. You get more impressions, more reach, more engagement with videos because videos, again, connect more emotionally with the end user more than photos, especially if the videos have more of a deep and meaningful context to the user and somehow relates to their or solves their problem or offers some sort of value. People tend to engage more with videos.
Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side of top Instagram tips for 2019, you also put out a video as to why you'll fail on social media in 2019. And one of them is relevant content. So what do you mean by producing relevant content?
So relevant content means content that really relates to your users. You see brands out there like posting content that's not really relevant to the user, but more relevant to themselves. You post things that you personally like instead of what your potential audience may actually be interested in. So just tailoring that content towards what the audience is interested in. And the best way to do that is just to go through, again, who are your top profiles in your industry, in your niche, and looking through their engagement and looking through their content and then finding out what people are actually resonating with and seeing all that engagement and then replicating something similar and just adding a bit more flavor to it. Something that's more personalized to your brand and what you do.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. And then back with another thing in terms of relevant content is what's that line when it comes to someone that's like a personal brand and not necessarily a business between producing content that you want to produce versus producing content that you know people want to see? Because if you're only producing content people want to see, eventually at some point it's not going to become fun for you anymore. So what's that balance, do you think, between posting content you want to create versus what other people want to see?
Look, that's a really good question. Actually, it comes down to what the end goal is, because in business, it's not about you; it's about them. And if your goal is to be in business for long term, the content would have to be primarily about the end user. It's not about you. It's not about your brand. It's not about anything else. It's about them as the end goal, because when you resonate with people, people engage with you, and people end up buying from you, or purchasing from you, or conducting some sort of a transaction with you. Whereas if it's a personal profile or a personal brand that you're building, I think the key thing is you still got to stay true to your values in terms of like what you value and what you appreciate in terms of what kind of content you want to post. But at the same time, you got to look at what's working as well for other users, and somehow integrating the two together without being too cliche with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then another important part too is that you kind of talked about when it comes to selling, you need to create content that resonates with people. And another video that you made was turning your followers into customers. So with someone that's growing their personal brand, how long should they wait before they really try to start and sell to their followers? Because they kind of come hot out the gate, just selling, as opposed to trying to build their brand and build that relationship. It might not go well in terms of trying to convert your followers into customers. So when is that sweet spot to start trying to convert your followers into paying customers?
Okay, that's another good question. So how I approach this is from two different angles. One, from a content perspective. If you were a personal brand or a business or whatever, I would say focus 40% of your content, or no more than 40% of your content, should be promotional. That's content where you're actively trying to sell or promote your product. And 60% of your content should be more value-driven, educational and inspirational. And this is where the sweet spot, this is where the sales happen on their own. So usually sales don't happen in the promotional side of things. It happens when you actually start educating your users or providing some sort of value and inspiring them, this is where the sale usually happens on its own, organically. So this is advice from a content perspective, but in terms of time frame when to sell, the key is to, similar to what Gary Vee says, it's to give value, 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 then ask for a sale. So providing as much value as you can initially, and then opening up a conversation and being more organic with it, not trying to sell straight off the bat. Just open up a conversation, find out what people are actually interested in, find out more about their buying habits, what they like, and what their personal interests, and what did they find or what did they like personally about your program or whatever else you're selling. And from there, you can easily start providing value to them personally through direct messages. And usually, like I said, the sale will happen on its own. The more value you provide, it'll all happen organically.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that, because I think the best form of advertising is advertising that doesn't feel like advertising. Because at the end of the day, people don't really like to be sold to. They kind of like to make that decision on their own.
Yeah, that's right.
But now, talking about the importance of branding and branding your Instagram and social media accounts.
How to brand your Instagram?
Because I've heard you talk about how that's an important thing when it comes to Instagram. Is you have to have a proper and cohesive brand.
Branding is very crucial now, because Instagram just recently updated its algorithm. I don't know if you're familiar with what happened in the past couple of weeks. There's been a really, really big change in terms of organic reach that's gone down less than 7% now. Which means you don't get the same visibility that you used to get 6 months ago, a year ago, or whatever. So now your value is going to be driven primarily through content and really effective branding. The other thing as well that happened here in Australia and 6 other countries is the like count has been removed. So no users can actually see how many likes you get on your posts. So if you're a big brand, you can't really show off that you're getting thousands of likes on your posts, which again may hinder engagement on your posts. And again, this is where branding will have to come in. So now content will become a very important aspect in your marketing strategy, and having the right brand feel and look, and personalizing that brand experience for users will become very important.
There's a couple of things that I want to kind of unpack there. The first one being the Instagram algorithm. So you've referenced it a couple times here, and I feel like for a lot of people, the algorithm is this big, scary thing that they don't really know anything about. So what are some resources you use to kind of learn about the Instagram algorithm and how it works as it constantly updates?
Look, in terms of resources, I use this industry news websites like Social Media Examiner and Social Media News. Other resources would be like LinkedIn groups that I'm part of, where I get a lot of this info myself. And again, it's also testing with the multiple brands that I work with and promote, seeing that difference in terms of engagement over a period of time, and then assessing that what's actually happening with the algorithm.
Mm-hmm. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the Instagram removing likes, because I live in Canada, so I was in the first country that had the like count removed. So how do you kind of feel about that decision? Do you think Instagram should take it platform wide? How are you finding it after the first little while with it in Australia?
Yeah, look, I look at it from two different perspectives, from a user and then from a marketing perspective. From a user perspective, I think it's a good thing, because it removes that pressure from having to have strong engagement on your account, and having to being able to generate so much engagement and interactions on your account. So you can now post content freely without worrying about how many likes you get or how people can actually perceive your content. So that's the first thing from a user perspective. From a marketing perspective, I know that Instagram is a corporation and it's a business at the end of the day, and they're in it to make money. It's not just about mental health and all those fancy things that they like to parade. At the end of the day, Instagram, the reason they do this stuff is to push more brands and people to actually use paid advertising to actually generate that engagement and actually get their content out. There was two major updates. It wasn't just the likes; it was actually the reach that has gone down dramatically. And so they updated the likes to kind of smooth that thing over, so people don't really notice that their engagement has also dropped at the same time. So it's a strategy by Instagram to move people towards paid advertising.
That's really interesting. And I was curious if your comments have disappeared, because I've noticed on mine at first when I got the initial update is the likes were gone, but I could still see how many comments and stuff. But now I can't see comments unless I click on the comment button below the photo. Otherwise, it doesn't show me the amount of comments or anything.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so that's another update that they've done recently.
That's crazy. But you also wrote a book about Instagram, 10x Your Brand Using Instagram Marketing. So what led you to decide to write that book?
Well, look, I found Instagram to be a very interesting platform. To market yourself, to market your brand. Like I've done a lot of good business through Instagram and through people reaching out to me, or brands reaching out to me to partner up, and I found it to be a really good tool for businesses and brands to actually jump on board and create a story and eventually, promote and sell their products. So that's where I found a number of strategies that I've used personally for my account and some of the clients that I'm working with. And I found the best way to, get that message out is through a book. So I decided to write a book about how to actually build a brand properly without having to worry about the algorithm. So my book primarily focuses on the style of content you should be posting, when you should be posting, how to build a story, how to network with direct messages, how to get that strong engagement on your account, and what kind of tools you should be using to build that strong engagement, and so on. So it's a bit just giving out value, I guess, to the end user and help them really understand the platform.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because my next question was going to be, are you going to plan to update it? Because with how frequently Instagram changes, it might not remain, like the tactics at the beginning might not be the same at the end of the year. But it sounds like you've written it in an evergreen way where you're not necessarily focused on what happens with it updates, but focusing on the things that you can control as a user.
That's right. Like, so the blueprints focus on brand building. It's not really focused on, quick strategies or tips to, grow to, 10K in a couple of days. Is like, these are ways that I do for like other brands. It depends on, obviously the strategy, but the book is, like you said, it's evergreen, so it can be used for the next 2 or 3 years until Instagram dramatically again changes the algorithm and does something different where content is not the right metric. Then content will have to change.
Yeah, but as someone that's very well versed in the Instagram space, and with them constantly making changes that is bringing down organic engagement, your like counts is going down and people getting fed up, and with the trends of people trying to use social media less because based around a conversation around mental health, then do you think that people are going to eventually start to kind of slowly trickle off Instagram? And do you think that as a platform, it's kind of hit its maturity and it's starting to decline a little bit?
I see that definitely. Like it's what I think, like, or what I perceive to be happening right now is that Instagram built and Instagram's into a very mature platform right now. It's got really strong active user base. So now it's time for them to monetize that base and actually make money from that. Same thing as what happened to Facebook a couple of years ago when they reduced the reach on fan pages to less than between 1% to 5%, which is quite ridiculous. So then a lot of people started using paid ads to actually start getting the content seen. And it's the same thing that's happening in Instagram. And I forecast that by the end of the year, the reach will probably dramatically go down even lower than 7%. It will probably go towards the 2 to 5% reach, where everyone will be using pretty much paid ads to actually get their content seen, even by their audience. In terms of, you mentioned what would be what's on the horizon in terms of like other social media platforms, or was that
Yeah, that's great. That was where I was going to take it next. Was, are there any platforms you're kind of looking at and going to start producing content elsewhere?
Look, I like TikTok. I don't know if you heard of TikTok.
I have.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting platform. At the moment, it's still used by a lot of under 18-year-olds that are using that platform. So it's not really suitable for a lot of brands. But I'm finding, I've actually read an article this morning about Levi's using it, and Washington Post using TikTok for behind the scenes type content, and putting content out just organically to build a bit of an audience. TikTok is still one of those platforms where the algorithm is pretty much wide open, so you can grow viral very quickly. But then the only thing that I'm still hesitant about is the audience is a really, really young demographic, which is very similar to Snapchat, which is not really my ideal audience, or a lot of the brands that don't have a demographic that are, teenagers.
Yeah, and that's something I've been trying to figure out is what that balance is, and like what kind of content could I produce that would resonate with the audience on TikTok? Because even though they might not be the people that I'm going to be like wanting to watch my content now, in a couple of years they could be, right? So it's like, what kind of content can I get to kind of start making that early foundation with a bit of a younger audience?
Yeah, that's right.
But I was very curious about any of your other social media platforms. Like, are you using YouTube at all? I found a couple different YouTube accounts with your name on them, but there isn't too much content there. Like, are you going to plan to start kind of producing more content around your social media expertise on a platform like YouTube or LinkedIn?
I've attempted at YouTube a couple of times, but YouTube's like a whole other ball game. It requires a lot of time in terms of content creation, videos, editing, publishing, and then getting your content actually seen, and building that tier. So that's I guess more of a long term strategy that I'm not really too focused on that. But I'm actually focusing a lot now on LinkedIn, since I'm in the business to business space. I work with brands, help brands grow on social. So I'm building strong connections on LinkedIn at the moment, and just all this, putting content out and just building a bit of a followership on LinkedIn is probably my core focus at the moment as well.
So how does your content then differ from Instagram to LinkedIn? Because I assume that you're not posting your luxury travel content on LinkedIn.
No, definitely not. Look, LinkedIn's a business to business platform, so the content should be a lot more educational, a lot more informative, and relevant to the users. So I post a lot more educational content in terms of what we do at my agency for brands, and how we're different, and our I guess like unique selling point, and giving that value and tips on how to leverage social media platforms.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned your agency, and I believe it's called Social Connection, correct?
That's right.
And so when did you decide to start your own agency? Because you said you worked in the agency side for a while. So when did you make that switch to launch your own?
3 years ago, I started Social Connection. I used to work for 20 different agencies, like on a contract basis, in that 7-year period. I've just decided that it's time for me to kind of forge my own path, and create my own agency which offers something a little bit more different than what's in the marketplace at the moment. So Social Connection was formed 3 years ago.
So what is your kind of your unique selling point then, that different offering that you have from everyone else in the market right now?
So I guess the way we use Instagram is really different than like what's in the marketplace in a lot of agencies. We're actually using paid ads to grow Instagram accounts, and that's using a mix of Instagram story ads, and creating really compelling content to drive that traffic to someone's profile, and just building that profile up. At the same time, we're also countering that engagement drop with paid ads, not boosting directly through Instagram, because that's a very poor method and fastest way to lose money, but more using Facebook Ads Manager to actually build a strong engagement for like a really low cost for us in terms of reaching a really strong audience. So these are some of the methods that we're using that I know that not a lot of other agencies are using, and they're kind of dropping the ball on that. The other thing as well, we're very confident in our services and what we do, that we offer a work for free guarantee, which means like if brands come on board and work with us for a specific period of time and they're not seeing the results, or they're not getting that whatever we agreed on, we actually waive our management fee, and then we work for free until we achieve that result.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm assuming that doesn't happen very often.
Definitely not.
And earlier, when you were talking about Facebook ads, there you mentioned that boosting a post is a easy way to lose money. So just kind of, I know it varies on a case by case basis depending on who you're setting your ads up for. But what are some best practices for people when it comes to Facebook and Instagram advertising?
Look, best practices is avoid running ads on Instagram directly. I personally think that's the fastest way to lose money. And one, delimit your reach. Two, you don't have a strong objective in terms of like what's your core objective and what you're trying to achieve. To delimit your visibility in terms of per spend and how many people you can actually reach. So it's very limited in that sense. I use Facebook Ads Manager, where I can actually create a proper campaign for Instagram, growing Instagram followers using, Instagram story ads, having a really strong copy and content with a call to action that takes them back to the user profile. At the same time, I guess like promoting specific posts that you really want to get seen, and putting that out to through Facebook Ads Manager, and having a bit more targeted campaign set up.
And I recently saw that your agency, you opened up an office in New York, right?
Yes, that's right.
So then how does the social media marketing different from the USA to Australia? Because I'm assuming they're not the exact same.
Look, there are some similarities. The reason why we're going into the States, it's because I feel the demographic in the States are a lot more in tune with social. Also, the demographic are a lot more entrepreneurial compared to Australians, who unfortunately are a lot more skeptical about social media and putting in a decent investment, to grow their socials and generate more sales and revenue. So I feel that the States is a really good spot to target, and there's a lot more opportunity in that space.
Mm-hmm. But would you say that the competition maybe in the United States is a little bit more fierce? Like, do you say that people are a little bit more aware and executing within the Facebook ads, more executing better on Facebook ads in the United States than in Australia?
Yes, like definitely, it's definitely more competitive. There are definitely a lot of good agencies in the States, but again, it just comes down to how you do your outreach and how you actually prospect, and what kind of value you provide at the end of the day. I don't know any other agency in America that offers a work for free guarantee. So again, that's a really unique selling point for us.
Mm-hmm. And you also have your consulting business, Digital Mastery. So how does that differ from Social Connection?
Yeah, so social connection is the implementation side of things. This is where we build a strategy out and implement as well. So it's completely hands off for brands. Whereas digital mastery coach is basically more consulting and strategy work. So this is for me where I take on brands or individuals that want to brand themselves and grow their socials and build a strong audience and grow their revenue. I build custom plans and strategy for them where they can actually take that away and implement themselves, or they can hire an external agency, or they can hire me to implement. So it gives them more freedom in terms of what they can do with it.
Mm-hmm. And then so social mastery then is you kind of as an individual doing the consulting, and then social connection is you and your employees, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And then so when you were growing your agency, did you realize it was a time to start bringing on employees?
Look, when it got busy.
That's fair.
Yeah, I guess like with clients, yeah, like definitely like when like in my first 6 months was it was a very exponential growth which I didn't anticipate. I was just basically testing the waters. I was like, okay, let me go out on my own and see what if you are actually interested in my services and what I do. And surprisingly, like I put on quite a bit of clients in the first 6 months, which I was a bit overwhelmed. I was like, okay, I can't do this stuff on my own. So then I started hiring a bit of assistance and teaching them my strategy and what I do, and I have them replicate what I do to different clients. And from there, that's when I know I needed to hire more people and actually build an agency.
Okay. And then does having the over 200,000 plus followers on your personal Instagram account add some credibility to your businesses and make other companies more inclined to work with you?
Absolutely. Look, it all comes down to branding and credibility and like proof of concept. I talk to big brands that use agencies or social media or people that are just managing the socials and and then they see my account and I say, look, like if I just look at what some of the other guys are actually offering and what they're doing, I said, look, there's a big difference between someone just talking about it and someone that's actually doing it. And then I just showing them what I can do and showing them my personal profile. So I get the conversion becomes very easy after that.
And then how do you feel about influencer marketing? Because I saw on your blog, you said you could go with an influencer who has millions of followers, pay exorbitant rates, and hope to gain some traction just by association. But we put in the work to truly support your brand. So is influencer marketing something that you don't necessarily believe in?
No, I definitely believe in influencer marketing. I think it's really good avenue to drive targeted traffic to your account, but you'll have to dig a little bit deeper with influencer marketing because not what you see on the superficial level is what it actually is. So you got to look into analytics. You got to look into does that user or does that influencer match your brand style and brand aesthetics? Uh, do they have the right engagement on their account, on their posts? All these key elements are very important to vet before you work with an influencer and hire an influencer. The other thing as well, I find a lot of brands and even like influencer agencies that offer influencer marketing in the wrong way, where they'll hire an influencer and they're and get them to do like say one post, for example, and they buy one post on their page as a placement, and that's it. So the brand doesn't really get a strong visibility in terms of or reach because one post is not enough to actually drive any sort of meaningful result for a brand. I treat influencers more or influencer account as more billboards. Do you think about a company that advertises on anywhere in a traditional place? If they were to advertise a billboard, they're not going to put up the billboard for one day, then remove it and say, "Oh, yeah, the campaign didn't do well." They'll leave the billboard on for a month and then really track the conversions for over a month, how many people actually seen the billboard and what the conversion is based on that. So it's the same principle that I use for influencers. So having multiple placements on their account guarantees that you're reaching a big part of their audience and at the same time reinforcing that message where retargeting kind of comes in and having all those different touch points.
And so, with having such a big following on Instagram, have you been able to see both sides of influencer marketing? One as the agency kind of dealing with the influencers, but on the other side as being the influencer yourself?
Yeah, of course. Like whenever I work with brands, like I try to position myself as the brand themselves and what they would expect from me and how I can deliver as much value as possible for them. Because at the end of the day, it's all value driven. Like brands now are very aware and very conscious of what they're getting back in terms of value. Just having the one post is just not enough in terms of value for a brand. But rather creating more of an actual content plan for them and having multiple placements and stories and so on. So this is my expectations with influencers that work for our brands because I look at it from as a marketer. I actually have a bit of a very strong tone and how I work with influencers. I ensure that I drive at least 5x value from each influencer that we work with.
And so, as an influencer yourself, who are some people that you watch and that you consume? What kind of content do you watch?
Look, I love Gary Vee. Gary Vee is always one of the best in that space. I also like Stephen Bartlett. I don't know if you know Stephen Bartlett. He owns Social Chain, which is the largest social media agency in the world. Very inspirational. I actually got my inspiration from Stephen Bartlett. There's quite a few other accounts like Ed. Who else do I? There's just quite a few other brands that I can't think off the top of my head right now.
That's okay, man. But for the last question, and I usually flip the script a little bit, and I'm curious if you had like a crystal ball that could show you the answer to anything. What's one question you would want to know the answer to?
Oh, that's a good question. um, yeah, that's a hard question. I guess to me, it's how to impact as many people as possible within the shortest amount of time.
Okay.
Probably,
That's fair.
yeah.
I like that. But we're a little bit over time here. So I just want to thank you for taking the time to come on the podcast. I want to give you the floor. Where can the people find you? Plug everything and anything that you got right now.
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, it's SMV.Style. You can find me also. You can reach out to me on digitalmasterycoach.com. This is my consulting business. Or if you want to look at my agency, it's socialconnection.com.au. And yeah, you can reach me on all three pretty much.
Awesome. And I'll make sure everything is linked in the show notes down below. And I want to thank you once again for coming on the podcast. And I want to thank everybody for listening to this episode, whether you've listened the entire way through, you only listen to bits and pieces. I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out. Everyone, do me a favor, go and follow Sam on Instagram. Check out his agency, check out his blog. I'll make sure everything is linked in the show notes down below. Like I said, and if you'd like to follow me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @TheJacobKelly. Come and say hello. And if you'd like to find the podcast, just search up My Social Life and we'll come up. Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We'll talk soon.